They forced her to kneel on the cold stone, and the Alpha King watched in silence. The courtyard was packed with bodies, all pressed together like they had come to witness something sacred. But there was nothing sacred about this. The air smelled of damp earth and old fear, the kind that seeped into your bones and made your hands shake even when you told yourself to be still. Tina could feel the weight of every stare, every whisper, every laugh that sliced through the crowd like glass dragging across skin. She kept her head down, eyes fixed on the cracks in the stone beneath her knees, because looking up meant seeing their faces. And seeing their faces meant remembering that these were people who once called her family. Her wrists were bound with rope. Not chains. Rope. As if they wanted to make it clear that she wasn't dangerous enough to warrant metal. As if she was just disposable. The knot dug into her skin, rough and unforgiving, and she could feel the burn starting to spread, but she didn't move. She didn't dare. Because the moment she flinched, the moment she showed any sign of weakness, they would pounce. They always did. Someone laughed. A sharp, ugly sound that echoed off the stone walls and settled in her chest like a bruise. She didn't know who it was. She didn't need to. It could have been anyone. It could have been everyone. Her father stood to the side, arms crossed, face blank. He wasn't looking at her. He hadn't looked at her since they dragged her out of the house that morning, hands gripping her arms so tight she knew there would be marks. He hadn't said a word. Not when they tied her wrists. Not when they shoved her to her knees. Not when the crowd began to gather, eyes gleaming with something that looked too much like hunger. Her mother was somewhere in the back. Tina couldn't see her, but she could feel her absence like a hole in the world. A mother should have screamed. Should have fought. Should have thrown herself between her daughter and the wolves circling closer. But she didn't. She stayed silent. And that silence was louder than any scream could ever be. The sky above was gray, heavy with clouds that threatened rain but never delivered. The air was thick, suffocating, pressing down on her shoulders like hands. The courtyard itself was ancient, built from stone that had seen too many ceremonies, too many sacrifices, too many moments where power decided who lived and who didn't. The walls were tall, imposing, lined with torches that flickered weakly in the dim light. Shadows danced across the ground, twisting and shifting, making it hard to tell where one person ended and another began. They had dressed her in white. A long, simple dress that clung to her skin and made her look like something out of a nightmare. A virgin's sacrifice. A lamb led to slaughter. It was symbolic, of course. Everything about this was symbolic. The white was meant to show purity, innocence, submission. It was meant to make her look small. And it worked. She could feel the cold seeping through the fabric, biting into her knees, crawling up her legs. Her fingers were numb. Her breath came in short, shallow bursts, each one a little harder than the last. She wanted to cry. God, she wanted to cry. But she didn't. Because crying meant giving them what they wanted. And she had already given them too much. A man stepped forward. Elder Corvin. His face was lined with age, his eyes sharp and calculating. He was the one who had brokered the deal. The one who had decided that peace with the enemy pack was worth more than her life. He looked at her now with something that might have been pity, but it was buried so deep beneath duty and tradition that it barely registered. Tina of the Ashenmoor pack, he began, his voice carrying across the courtyard like a bell tolling for the dead. You have been chosen. Chosen. What a pretty word for sold. You will be given to the Ironridge pack as a sign of goodwill. As a symbol of our commitment to peace. He kept talking, but Tina stopped listening. The words were just noise now, meaningless sounds that filled the air and meant nothing. She knew what this was. She knew why they were doing it. The Ironridge pack was powerful, brutal, feared. They had been enemies for generations, and now, suddenly, her pack wanted peace. And peace required a price. A sacrifice. Someone expendable. So they chose her. Not because she had done anything wrong. Not because she had broken any laws or betrayed anyone, but because she was convenient. Because she was the daughter no one cared about. The one who didn't quite fit. The one who was too quiet, too strange, too other. The one whose power scared them. Because she had power. She could feel it now, coiled tight in her chest, burning just beneath her skin. A heat that pulsed with every heartbeat, threatening to break free. She had spent her whole life learning to hide it, to bury it so deep that no one would ever know. But it was still there. Waiting. Watching. And it was angry. The crowd shifted. Whispers rippled through the mass of bodies, and Tina felt the air change. The temperature dropped. The torches flickered. And then, silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from people holding their breath. The kind that comes when something more powerful than fear enters the room. She felt him before she saw him. A presence that pressed against her awareness like a hand on the back of her neck. Heavy. Commanding. Undeniable. It was the kind of presence that made your instincts scream at you to run, to hide, to do anything but stay still. But she couldn't run. She was tied. Kneeling. Trapped. The crowd parted without a word. No one pushed. No one shoved. They just moved. As if an invisible force was clearing a path. And then she saw him. The Alpha King. He walked slowly, each step deliberate, measured, the sound of his boots against stone cutting through the silence like a blade. He was tall, impossibly tall, with broad shoulders and a presence that seemed to fill the entire courtyard. His hair was dark, almost black, falling just past his shoulders in waves that caught the firelight. His face was sharp, all hard angles and brutal beauty, the kind of face that looked like it had been carved from stone by someone who didn't believe in softness. His eyes were gray, cold, unreadable. They swept over the crowd with the same detached interest one might give to a field of insects. He didn't look at her. Not yet. He stopped a few feet away, hands clasped behind his back, stance relaxed, but somehow still radiating power. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than any command. Elder Corvin swallowed. Alpha King Draven, he said, and his voice wavered just slightly. We are honored by your presence. We offer this girl as a gesture of... Who decided this? Draven's voice was low, calm, almost conversational. But there was something underneath it. Something sharp. Something dangerous. Corvin blinked. We, the Council. The Council. Draven repeated the word slowly, like he was tasting it. And did the Council consult with me before making this decision? Silence. Tina's heart was pounding now, so loud she could hear it in her ears. She still hadn't looked up. She didn't dare. No, Corvin said finally. But we assumed. You assumed. Draven took a step forward. Just one. But the entire crowd flinched. You assumed that you could decide the fate of one of your own without consequence. You assumed that offering her to my pack would buy you favor. You assumed that I would accept. Another step. You assumed wrong. The air was electric now, crackling with tension. Tina could feel it on her skin, in her lungs, in the way her pulse hammered against her throat. She risked a glance up, just for a second, and immediately regretted it. Because Draven was looking at her now. And his eyes were not cold. They were burning. Untie her, he said. No one moved. Untie her, he repeated, and this time it wasn't a request. It was a command. The kind of command that made grown men drop to their knees and beg for mercy. Someone rushed forward, fumbling with the knots, hands shaking so badly they could barely grip the rope. Tina felt the pressure release, the rope falling away, and she gasped, pulling her wrists to her chest. The skin was raw, angry red lines cutting across her pale flesh. Draven extended his hand. She stared at it. At the long fingers, the calluses, the strength in every line. She didn't move. Stand, he said quietly. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Tina felt something other than fear. She felt hope. She reached out, trembling, and placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, warm, grounding. He pulled her to her feet effortlessly, and suddenly she was standing, legs shaking, breath coming in ragged gasps, but standing. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Draven turned to face them, still holding her hand, and when he spoke, his voice carried across the courtyard like thunder. "This woman is under my protection. Anyone who harms her, anyone who speaks against her, anyone who so much as looks at her the wrong way will answer to me. Do you understand?" Silence. "Do you understand?" he repeated, and this time the power in his voice made the ground tremble. "Yes, Alpha King," the crowd murmured as one. He turned back to Tina, and for just a moment, just a heartbeat, his expression softened. "You're safe now," he said, and she almost believed him. Almost. Because being sold had broken her. But being claimed by a man who never makes mistakes might be far more dangerous. Tina's hand was still in his, and she could feel the heat of his palm bleeding through her skin, spreading up her arm like wildfire. It should have been comforting. It should have made her feel safe. But all she could feel was the weight of every eye in the courtyard burning into her back, and the terrible, creeping certainty that she had just traded one cage for another. Draven didn't let go. He held her hand firmly, possessively, like he was daring anyone to try and take her back. His thumb brushed against her knuckles, a gesture so subtle she almost missed it, and she felt her breath catch. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to stand here, in front of all these people, holding the hand of the most powerful man in the territory, and not fall apart completely. Her father was staring at her now. Finally. His face had gone pale, all the blood draining from his cheeks like someone had cut him open and let it pour out. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came. What could he say? What excuse could possibly justify what he had done? What they had all done? Her mother had pushed her way to the front of the crowd. Her face was streaked with tears, mascara running down her cheeks in dark rivers, and she looked like she wanted to say something, to reach out, to beg forgiveness. But Draven's gaze shifted to her, just for a second, and whatever words she had died in her throat. She stepped back. And that was somehow worse than the silence. "Elder Corvin," Draven said, his voice still calm, still controlled, but with an edge that made the old man flinch. "You mentioned a council decision. I'd like to hear more about that." Corvin's hands were shaking. He clasped them together, trying to hide it, but Tina could see the tremor running through his fingers. "The council, we voted. It was unanimous. We believed that offering Tina to the Ironridge Pack would what?" Draven interrupted. "Secure peace? By favor? Save your own skins." Corvin swallowed hard. "All of the above. And did anyone ask Tina what she wanted?" Silence. Draven's jaw tightened. "That's what I thought." He turned his attention back to Tina, and his expression softened just enough to make her heart stutter. "What's your name?" She blinked. You just said it. I want to hear you say it." Her throat was dry. She had to force the words out, each syllable scraping against her vocal cords like sandpaper. "Tina." "Tina," he repeated, and the way he said it made it sound like something precious. Something worth protecting. "Do you want to stay here?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy and impossible. Did she want to stay? In this place where her own family had sold her? Where the people she grew up with had watched her humiliation like it was entertainment? Where she would spend the rest of her life knowing that she was nothing more than a bargaining chip? "No," she whispered. "Then you won't." He released her hand, and she immediately felt the loss of his warmth, the absence of that grounding touch. He turned to address the crowd again, and when he spoke, his voice was cold enough to freeze blood. "The Ashenmoor Pack has violated sacred law. You cannot sell what does not belong to you. Tina is not property. She is not a commodity. And she is certainly not yours to give away." "But the council," Corvin started. "The council has no authority over matters involving my territory," Draven cut him off. And as of this moment, Tina falls under my jurisdiction. She is mine to protect, mine to defend. And anyone who tries to claim otherwise will find themselves answering to me personally. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Whispers started again, low and dangerous, but no one dared speak loud enough for Draven to hear. Tina's father finally found his voice. Alpha King, please. You must understand. We had no choice. The Iron Ridge Pack was threatening war. They demanded tribute. We had to give them something. So you gave them your daughter. The words were simple, factual, but they landed like a punch to the gut. Her father's face crumpled, and for a moment, Tina thought he might actually cry. She almost wanted him to. Almost wanted to see some sign that he regretted what he'd done. But then his expression hardened, and she realized the truth. He didn't regret it. He just regretted getting caught. She's not like the others, her father said, and there was something desperate in his tone now. She has abilities. Dangerous abilities. We couldn't control her. We couldn't. Couldn't what? Draven's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Couldn't accept that your daughter is more powerful than you? Couldn't handle the fact that she doesn't fit into your neat little boxes? So you decided to get rid of her. Her father said nothing. Draven stepped forward, closing the distance between them in 2 long strides. He leaned in, his face inches from her father's, and when he spoke, his voice was so low that only those closest could hear. But Tina heard every word. If I ever see you near her again, if I ever hear that you've so much as spoken her name, I will personally ensure that you spend the rest of your miserable life regretting the day you were born. Do you understand me? Her father nodded, face white as bone. Draven straightened, rolling his shoulders like he was shaking off something distasteful. He turned back to Tina, and the coldness in his expression melted away, replaced by something she couldn't quite name. Concern? Curiosity? Something else? Can you walk? He asked gently. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Good. Then let's get you out of here. He didn't offer his hand this time. Instead, he placed his palm on the small of her back, a light touch that somehow felt more intimate than holding hands had. It was guiding, protective, but not controlling. He was giving her the choice to move, to follow, to trust him. And despite every instinct screaming at her to be careful, to not replace one prison with another, she found herself stepping forward. The crowd parted again as they walked. No one spoke. No one moved. They just watched, eyes wide, as the Alpha King led her through the courtyard and toward the massive iron gates that separated the Ashenmoor territory from the rest of the world. Tina's legs felt like they might give out at any moment. Each step was harder than the last, her body finally catching up to the trauma of the last few hours. She could feel bruises forming on her knees, the raw skin on her wrists throbbing, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. But she kept walking, because behind her was everything that had hurt her, and in front of her was the unknown. They reached the gates, and Draven gestured to someone she couldn't see. The gates swung open with a groan of metal on metal, revealing a line of vehicles waiting beyond. Black SUVs, expensive and imposing, engines already running. Guards stood at attention, all of them wearing the same dark uniforms, all of them radiating the same controlled violence that Draven carried so effortlessly. One of the guards stepped forward, a tall man with scars running down the side of his face and eyes that had seen too much. Alpha, he said, bowing his head slightly. Everything is prepared. Good. Draven guided Tina toward the first SUV, opening the back door for her. She hesitated, staring into the dark interior, and suddenly the reality of what was happening hit her like a freight train. She was leaving. Leaving her pack. Leaving her family. Leaving everything she had ever known. And she was going with a man she didn't know, to a place she had never been, with no idea what would happen next. I know you're scared, Draven said quietly, and she realized he was standing close enough that she could feel his breath on her hair. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I promise you this, Tina. I will not hurt you. I will not use you. And I will not let anyone else touch you. You have my word. She turned to look at him, really look at him, for the first time. Up close, he was even more devastating. His eyes weren't just gray, they were silver, like molten metal, and they held a depth that made her feel like he could see straight through her. His jaw was covered in dark stubble, and there was a scar running along his left cheekbone, barely visible unless you were this close. He looked like a man who had fought wars and won. Like a man who didn't make promises lightly. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing this? Something flickered in his expression. Something that looked almost like pain. Because no one should be sold like cattle. And because... He paused, jaw tightening. Because I know what it's like to be treated as less than human. There was a story there. A wound that hadn't healed. She could see it in the set of his shoulders, the way his hands curled into fists at his sides before he forced them to relax. But she didn't push. She didn't have the right. Instead, she climbed into the SUV. The interior was leather and luxury, a stark contrast to the cold stone courtyard she had just left. Draven slid in beside her, and the door closed with a solid thunk that felt final. The guard got into the driver's seat, and within seconds, they were moving, pulling away from the gates, away from the Ashenmoor pack, away from everything. Tina pressed her face against the window, watching as the territory disappeared behind them. She could see people still gathered in the courtyard, small figures growing smaller with distance. She wondered if her mother was crying, if her father was relieved, if anyone would miss her at all. Probably not. Where are we going? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. My estate, Draven said. It's about an hour from here. You'll have your own room, your own space. No one will bother you unless you want them to. And then what? He was quiet for a moment, and when she looked at him, she found him already watching her. And then we figure it out, he said simply. You don't owe me anything, Tina. You're not a prisoner. You're not an obligation. You're just someone who deserves better than what you were given. She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the kindness in his words when she had spent so long believing she didn't deserve kindness. So she said nothing. She just turned back to the window and watched the world blur past, trees and fields and sky all bleeding together into a watercolor of freedom and fear. Draven didn't push her to talk. He just sat there, solid and steady beside her, a presence that somehow made the panic receding just a little easier to bear. And as the miles stretched between her and her old life, Tina felt something shift inside her chest. Not trust. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of hope. The kind of hope that whispered that perhaps, just perhaps, being claimed by the Alpha King wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of something else entirely. The estate appeared through the trees like something out of a dream. Or maybe a nightmare. Tina couldn't quite decide which. It was massive, sprawling across the hillside like a sleeping giant, all stone and glass and architectural impossibility. The main building rose 3 stories high, with wings extending on either side, and behind it she could see what looked like gardens, training grounds, and structures she couldn't even begin to identify. The driveway curved through manicured lawns and ancient oak trees, their branches reaching toward the sky like gnarled fingers. It was beautiful, intimidating, and so far removed from the small, cramped house she had grown up in that she felt her chest tighten with something that might have been inadequacy. The SUV pulled up to the front entrance, and before Draven could say anything, the door was opened by another guard. This one was younger, with kind eyes and a nervous energy that made him seem almost approachable. He offered Tina a small smile, and she found herself attempting to return it, though she wasn't sure her face remembered how. Draven exited first, then extended his hand to help her out. She took it because her legs were still shaking and she wasn't entirely sure she could stand on her own. The moment her feet touched the gravel driveway, she felt it. A pulse of energy that seemed to emanate from the very ground itself. It was warm, welcoming, but also watchful. Like the land was aware of her presence and was deciding whether to accept her. "You feel it," Draven said, and it wasn't a question. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The territory recognizes power," he said simply. "It's reacting to yours." She pulled her hand away from his, wrapping her arms around herself. "I don't have power." "Don't lie to yourself, Tina." His tone was gentle but firm. "Your family may have convinced you that what you are is something to be ashamed of. But here, that's not how we see things." Before she could respond, the front doors opened and a woman stepped out. She was older, maybe in her 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in an elegant bun and eyes that missed nothing. She wore simple but expensive clothing and carried herself with the kind of quiet authority that came from decades of managing chaos. "Alpha," she said, bowing her head slightly. Then her gaze shifted to Tina, and her expression softened. "And you must be our guest." "This is Mira," Draven explained. "She runs the household. If you need anything at all, she's the one to ask." Myra's smile was warm and genuine. "Come inside, dear. You look like you could use some tea and a comfortable chair." Tina wanted to argue. Wanted to say she didn't need comfort, didn't deserve it. But the truth was, she was exhausted. Bone-deep, soul-crushing exhaustion that made even breathing feel like too much effort. So she nodded and followed Mira into the house. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior. High ceilings, polished wood floors, tapestries, and artwork that looked like they belonged in museums. But it wasn't cold or sterile. There were signs of life everywhere. Books stacked on tables, a pair of muddy boots by the door, a jacket thrown over a chair. It felt lived in. Like a home, not a showcase. Mira led them through a series of hallways until they reached what appeared to be a private sitting room. A fire was already crackling in the fireplace, and comfortable furniture was arranged around it in a way that invited conversation. Mira gestured to one of the chairs, and Tina sank into it gratefully. "I'll have some tea brought in," Mira said. "And perhaps something to eat? You look like you haven't had a proper meal in days." Tina opened her mouth to protest, but Mira was already gone, moving with the efficiency of someone who had been doing this job for a very long time. Draven settled into the chair across from her, leaning back and studying her with those unsettling silver eyes. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," he said. "But I need to know some things. About your power. About what your pack was so afraid of." She stared at her hands. The raw marks on her wrists were already starting to fade, healing faster than they should. Faster than a normal wolf's would. "It started when I was 14, she said quietly. He didn't interrupt. Didn't push. Just waited. I was training with the other wolves my age. Learning to shift, to fight, to control the wolf inside. Everyone else was struggling with it. Taking weeks, sometimes months, to manage a full shift. But for me," she swallowed hard. "It happened instantly. One moment I was human, the next I was wolf. And the wolf was different. Different how? Bigger. Stronger. Silver." She finally looked up at him and was surprised to find no judgment in his expression. "Only curiosity. Most wolves in our pack are brown or gray. Standard coloring. But mine was silver. Like moonlight given form. And my eyes." "What color?" he asked softly. "Gold. Not the normal amber that shifters get. Pure gold. Like fire." Draven leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "That's not something to be ashamed of, Tina. That's rare. Special." "That's what they were afraid of," she said, and the bitterness in her voice surprised even her. "Because after the first shift, things started happening. When I got angry, lights would flicker. When I was upset, the temperature would drop. And once, when someone tried to hurt me during training, I She couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't say the words out loud. You defended yourself, Draven finished for her. I nearly killed him, she whispered. I didn't mean to. I didn't even know what I was doing. But fire came from my hands. Silver fire. It burned him so badly, he was in the medical wing for weeks. And after that, everything changed. The memories crashed over her like waves, each one sharper than the last. She remembered the way people started looking at her after that day. Not with awe or respect, but with fear. The kind of fear that made them cross the street to avoid her. That made parents pull their children away when she walked past. That made the elders hold secret meetings behind closed doors, their voices low and worried. They called me cursed, she continued, the words pouring out now like she couldn't stop them. Said I was touched by something unnatural. Something dark. They brought in specialists, people who claimed they could suppress the power, lock it away. They put me through rituals, ceremonies, hours of meditation and training designed to make me less. Did it work? Draven asked. She let out a bitter laugh. For a while. I learned to bury it so deep that I almost forgot it was there. Almost convinced myself that maybe they were right. Maybe I was dangerous. Maybe I needed to be controlled. She looked down at her hands again, flexing her fingers. But you can't kill something that's part of your soul. You can only suffocate it. And suffocated things have a way of fighting back. Is that why they sold you? Partially. She took a shaky breath. The Iron Ridge Pack was threatening war. They wanted resources, territory, tribute. The council decided that giving them something valuable would buy peace. And I was valuable in a way. A wolf with power they didn't understand. They probably thought the Iron Ridge Pack would be able to control me, or use me, or... She couldn't finish that thought either. Draven's jaw tightened. They were going to weaponize you. Most likely. She felt hollow saying it. Like she was talking about someone else's life, not her own. Silence settled between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Tina could feel Draven watching her, could sense the questions he wasn't asking. She knew what he was thinking. Why didn't she fight back? Why didn't she use her power to escape? Why did she just kneel there and accept her fate? I thought about fighting, she said quietly, answering the unspoken questions. When they came to get me this morning. When they tied my wrists. When they forced me to my knees. I thought about letting the fire out. About burning them all until there was nothing left but ash and regret. Why didn't you? She met his eyes. Because I didn't want to prove them right. I didn't want to become the monster they said I was. Something shifted in Draven's expression. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. You're not a monster, Tina. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He stood, crossing the small distance between them, and crouched down in front of her chair so they were eye level. You want to know how I know? Because monsters don't question themselves. Monsters don't care about the damage they cause. Monsters don't hold back their power because they're afraid of hurting people. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently took one of her hands in his. You held back because you have a conscience. Because despite everything they did to you, despite every reason you had to burn them all down, you chose mercy. That's not weakness. That's strength. Tears were building behind her eyes, hot and insistent, and she blinked rapidly to keep them at bay. She didn't deserve his kindness. Didn't deserve to be told she was strong when she had spent so long feeling weak. I don't know how to be anything other than afraid, she admitted. Then we'll figure it out together. He squeezed her hand gently. You're not alone anymore, Tina. I know trust doesn't come easy, especially not after what you've been through. But I meant what I said earlier. You're under my protection now. No one will hurt you here. No one will use you. And no one will make you feel like you need to hide who you are. A knock on the door interrupted whatever she might have said. Mira entered carrying a tray laden with tea, sandwiches, and what looked like fresh fruit. She set it down on the table between them with practiced efficiency. Eat, she said firmly, looking at Tina. You're too thin, and you've been through enough today without adding hunger to the list. Tina wanted to argue, but her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. Mira smiled knowingly and poured her a cup of tea before excusing herself. Draven returned to his chair, and for a while they sat in comfortable silence while Tina ate. The food was simple but delicious, and she realized with some surprise that she couldn't remember the last time she had eaten anything. Her family had stopped including her in meals weeks ago. Another small cruelty designed to remind her of her place. "Can I ask you something?" she said eventually. "Anything. Why did you come to the courtyard today? The ceremony wasn't supposed to involve you. It was just supposed to be an internal pack matter." Draven's expression darkened. "Because I've been watching your pack for months. The Iron Ridge pack isn't the only one they've been making deals with. They've been playing politics, making alliances with some very dangerous people. And when I heard rumors about a sacrifice, about a girl being sold..." He trailed off, jaw clenching. "I had to see for myself." "You were testing them," she realized. "In a way. I wanted to see if the rumors were true. If they would actually go through with it. And when I saw you kneeling there..." His hands curled into fists. "When I saw the way they looked at you, the way your own family stood by and did nothing, I knew I couldn't leave you there. So you saved me." "I claimed you," he corrected. "There's a difference." She set down her teacup, heart suddenly pounding. "What does that mean? Being claimed? It means you're under my protection. It means anyone who wants to hurt you has to go through me first. It means..." He hesitated, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked uncertain. "It means that as far as the shifter world is concerned, you belong to me now." The words should have terrified her, should have made her want to run. But instead, all she felt was a strange sense of relief. Because belonging to someone who saw her as more than a weapon, more than a burden, more than a mistake. Maybe that wasn't the worst fate in the world. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you rest. You heal. You learn to trust again. And when you're ready..." His eyes met hers, and there was something fierce in his gaze. Something that made her breath catch. "When you're ready, we'll figure out exactly what you're capable of. Because I have a feeling, Tina, that your pack only saw a fraction of your true power. And I intend to help you unlock the rest." 3 days passed before Tina felt steady enough to leave her room for more than meals. The room Mira had prepared for her was larger than the entire house she had grown up in. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the forest, letting in streams of natural light that made the space feel open and breathable. The bed was absurdly comfortable, piled high with soft blankets and pillows that seemed to absorb her nightmares. There was a private bathroom with a tub deep enough to drown in, a sitting area with books she had never heard of, and a closet filled with clothes that actually fit her. It was too much. All of it was too much. But Mira had insisted, and Draven had made it clear that refusing would only insult their hospitality. So Tina had retreated into this beautiful cage and tried to figure out who she was supposed to be now. The problem was, she didn't know. For so long, she had been defined by what she wasn't. Not good enough. Not normal enough. Not safe enough. But here, no one looked at her like she was broken. Mira brought her meals and chatted about mundane things like the weather and the garden. The guards she passed in the hallways nodded respectfully, never staring, never whispering. And Draven. Draven checked on her every evening. He never stayed long. Just knocked softly, waited for her permission to enter, and then spent maybe 10 or 15 minutes asking how she was feeling, if she needed anything, if the room was comfortable. He never pushed, never demanded, never made her feel like she owed him something for his kindness. It was disarming. On the 4th morning, Tina woke to find a note slipped under her door. The handwriting was sharp and elegant, undeniably Draven's. "If you're feeling up to it, meet me in the library after breakfast. There's something I'd like to show you. No pressure. D." She held the note for a long time, running her thumb over the ink, before finally getting dressed. The library was on the 2nd floor, tucked into the west wing of the estate. Tina had seen it briefly during Myra's tour on her first day, but she hadn't gone inside. Now, standing in front of the massive double doors, she felt a flutter of nervousness in her chest. She pushed the doors open. The library was breathtaking. 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, connected by a wrought iron staircase that spiraled up to a second-level balcony. Sunlight poured through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny stars. The smell of old paper and leather bindings was intoxicating, and for a moment, Tina just stood there, taking it all in. Beautiful, isn't it? She turned to find Draven emerging from between 2 shelves, a thick leather-bound book in his hands. He was dressed more casually than she had seen him before, in dark jeans and a simple black shirt that made his silver eyes seem even more intense. "It's incredible," she said honestly. "My mother collected books," he explained, gesturing around the room. She believed that knowledge was the only true power. That everything else, strength, authority, even magic, meant nothing if you didn't understand the world you were living in. "She sounds wise." Something sad flickered across his face. She died when I was 16. "I'm sorry." He nodded, accepting the condolence, then held up the book he was carrying. "I've been doing some research. About your power. About what you described to me the other night." Tina's stomach twisted. And I think I know what you are." He moved to one of the large reading tables near the window and set the book down, gesturing for her to join him. She approached slowly, heart pounding, and looked down at the open pages. The text was old, written in a language she didn't recognize, but there were illustrations scattered throughout. Wolves wreathed in silver flame. Figures with golden eyes standing before ancient altars. Symbols that seemed to pulse with their own light even though they were just ink on paper. "This is a chronicle of the Lumini," Draven said, his finger tracing one of the illustrations. "An ancient bloodline of shifters who were said to be blessed by the moon goddess herself. They were rare, appearing maybe once every few generations, and they were revered as protectors. Guardians of the balance between the human world and ours." Tina stared at the images, a chill running down her spine. "These wolves, they look like mine. Because they are like yours." He turned a few pages, revealing more illustrations. The Lumini were marked by 3 things: silver fur, golden eyes, and the ability to wield elemental magic. Usually fire, but sometimes lightning or light itself. They were incredibly powerful, but also incredibly vulnerable. Vulnerable how? Their power was tied to emotion, Draven explained. When they felt strongly about something, fear, anger, love, the magic would respond. If they weren't trained properly, if they didn't learn control, the power could consume them. Burn them out from the inside. She felt sick. Is that what happened to them? Is that why they're extinct? Not extinct, he corrected gently. Just hidden. The Lumini were hunted, Tina. Other packs feared their power, saw them as threats to the natural order. There were massacres. Entire bloodlines wiped out. The few who survived went into hiding, buried their abilities, pretended to be normal wolves. Over time, the bloodline diluted. The gifts became weaker, rarer, until most people believed the Lumini were just myths. "But I'm not a myth," she whispered. "No, you're not." He closed the book carefully and turned to face her fully. "You're a Lumini, Tina. Probably one of the only true ones left. And your pack knew it. That's why they were so afraid. That's why they tried to suppress your power instead of helping you master it." The room felt too small suddenly. Too confined. Tina backed away from the table, shaking her head. "No, that can't be right. I'm not special. I'm not some mythical guardian. I'm just a girl who can't control her own magic." "You can't control it because no one taught you how." Draven's voice was calm, grounding. "Your pack should have helped you. Should have found someone who understood what you were and could guide you. Instead, they punished you for being different. Made you believe you were cursed when really you were blessed. Blessed, she repeated bitterly. Is that what you call being ostracized by your own family? Being sold like livestock? Being so terrified of your own power that you'd rather bury it than use it? I call it survival, he said quietly. You did what you had to do to stay alive. But you don't have to survive anymore, Tina. You can live. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe that there was some greater purpose to all the pain, some reason why she had been born different. But belief required hope, and hope had been beaten out of her a long time ago. Why are you telling me this? She asked. What difference does it make what I am? Because there's more. He reached for the book again, flipping to a section near the end. There's a prophecy. An old one recorded by the moon priests centuries ago. It talks about a time of great darkness, when the packs would be divided, when old enemies would rise, and when the balance would be threatened. And it says that in that time a Lumini would emerge. One marked by silver and gold, one who carried the fire of the ancients. And that Lumini would either save our world or watch it burn. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and impossible. Tina laughed, but it came out hollow. You think I'm this prophesied savior? Me? I can barely control my own emotions, let alone save the world. I think you have potential, Draven said. And I think you deserve the chance to find out what you're capable of. Not because of some prophecy, not because the world might need you, but because you deserve to know who you really are. She looked down at the book, at the illustrations of powerful wolves doing impossible things, and felt something stir in her chest. Not quite hope. Not yet. But maybe curiosity. Maybe the smallest spark of wanting to know if she could be more than what her pack had made her believe. If this is true, she said slowly, if I really am one of these Lumini, then what? What am I supposed to do? First, you train, Draven said. Learn to control your power instead of fearing it. I have someone who can help with that. An old mentor of mine who specializes in elemental magic. He's agreed to work with you if you're willing. And after that? He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was careful. After that, you choose. You can stay here, build a life away from the politics and the prophecies and all of it. Or, he paused. Or you can help me. Help you with what? There's a reason I've been monitoring the packs in this region, he said. There's unrest growing. Old alliances falling apart. Rumors of something dark moving in the shadows, something that's been dormant for a long time. I've been trying to investigate, to figure out what's coming, but I'm missing pieces. And I think you might be one of those pieces. Tina felt fear crawl up her spine. You want to use me? No. The word was sharp, immediate. I want to work with you. There's a difference. Using you would mean forcing you, manipulating you, treating you like a tool. Working with you means giving you a choice. Means treating you like a partner, not a weapon. She studied his face, searching for any sign of deception, any hint that this was just another cage with prettier bars. But all she saw was sincerity. And something else. Something that looked almost like respect. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted. You don't have to decide right now, he said. Take all the time you need. Learn about your power, about your heritage. Figure out who Tina is when she's not being defined by fear. And then, when you're ready, if you're ever ready, we'll talk about what comes next. She nodded slowly, then looked back down at the book. Can I keep this? To read? Of course. Everything in this library is yours to use. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, making him look younger, less burdened. My mother would have liked you, I think. She always said that the people who questioned themselves the most were the ones who had the most to offer. Something warm unfurled in Tina's chest. Not quite trust. But maybe the beginning of it. When do I start training? She asked. His smile widened. Whenever you're ready. I'm ready now. He raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? You've only been here a few days. It's okay to take more time to settle in. I've wasted enough time being afraid, she said, and was surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. If I'm going to do this, if I'm going to figure out what I am, then I want to start now. Draven studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, come with me. He led her out of the library and through a series of hallways she hadn't explored yet, down a flight of stairs, and out through a side door she hadn't noticed before. They emerged into the gardens behind the estate, but instead of stopping there, he continued on, following a stone path that wound through the trees. The forest was beautiful in the morning light. Birdsong filled the air, and the smell of earth and pine was almost overwhelming. Tina could feel the pulse of the territory again, stronger now, like it was welcoming her. Or maybe warning her. After about 10 minutes of walking, they emerged into a clearing. It was circular, maybe 50 feet across, surrounded by ancient trees that seemed to lean inward like they were watching. In the center of the clearing was a stone altar, weathered and covered in moss, with symbols carved into its surface that matched the ones in the book Draven had shown her. "What is this place?" Tina whispered. "A sanctuary," Draven said. "Built by the Lumini centuries ago. It's a place where the veil between our world and the spirit realm is thin. Where magic is stronger, more responsive. If you're going to learn to control your power, this is the best place to do it." She moved closer to the altar, drawn by something she couldn't name. The moment her fingers touched the stone, she felt it. A surge of energy that raced up her arm and spread through her entire body like wildfire. The symbols on the altar began to glow, soft silver light pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "It recognizes you," Draven said from behind her, his voice filled with something that sounded like awe. "The sanctuary recognizes your bloodline." Tina pulled her hand back, gasping, but the glow didn't fade. If anything, it grew brighter, spreading from the altar to the ground beneath her feet, tracing patterns in the earth that hadn't been visible before. She could feel the power rising inside her, responding to the call of this ancient place, and for the first time since her first shift, she didn't try to push it down. She let it come. Silver fire bloomed in her palms, not painful, not destructive, but warm. Alive. It danced across her skin like it was celebrating, like it had been waiting years to be acknowledged. Her eyes flared gold, bright enough that she could see the reflection in Draven's stunned face. "Tina," he said softly, "you're glowing." She looked down at herself and realized he was right. Her entire body was wrapped in a soft silver light, and she could feel the magic humming beneath her skin, no longer fighting to break free, but simply existing. Being. Like it was finally home. And for the first time in her life, Tina didn't feel like a curse. She felt like something sacred. The training sessions became the center of Tina's world. Every morning, just after dawn, she would make her way to the sanctuary. Sometimes Draven would be there waiting for her. Other times, she would arrive to find an older man with white hair and eyes like chips of ice standing by the altar. His name was Stellan, and he had been Draven's mentor when Draven was young. He was patient but demanding, pushing Tina to her limits and then beyond, teaching her not just to control her power but to understand it. "Magic is not a weapon," Stellan would say, his voice rough like gravel. "It's an extension of your soul. Treat it with respect, and it will serve you. Try to dominate it, and it will consume you." So Tina learned. She learned to summon the silver fire without fear, to shape it, to direct it. She learned to feel the temperature shifts in the air before the magic manifested, to recognize the pull in her chest that meant her power was responding to her emotions. She learned meditation techniques that helped her stay grounded even when everything inside her was screaming. And slowly, painfully, she learned to trust herself. 2 weeks into her training, Draven asked her to join him for dinner. Not in the informal dining room where she usually ate alone or with Mira, but in the formal dining hall. It was the first time he had invited her anywhere that wasn't the sanctuary or the library, and Tina found herself nervous in a way that had nothing to do with fear. She chose a simple dress from the wardrobe, deep green with long sleeves that covered the faint scars on her wrists. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Her hair had regained its shine. Her skin didn't look so pale and drawn. Her eyes, those strange golden eyes, seemed brighter somehow. Alive. The dining hall was smaller than she had expected, intimate despite the high ceilings and elegant decor. A single table was set for two, candles flickering between them, and Draven stood when she entered, dressed in dark slacks and a deep blue shirt that made his silver eyes almost luminous. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her cheeks flush. "Thank you," she managed. He pulled out her chair, waiting until she was seated before taking his own seat across from her. Staff appeared almost instantly, bringing wine and the first course, then disappearing just as quickly. "How are you feeling?" Draven asked. "Stellan told me you've been making remarkable progress." "I don't know about remarkable," Tina said, taking a sip of wine to steady her nerves. "But I'm starting to understand it better. The magic. It's not as terrifying when you know what it's doing." "That's how it should have always been," he said quietly. "You should have been taught this from the beginning. You should have been celebrated, not hidden away." She didn't know what to say to that, so she focused on her food instead. The meal was delicious, course after course of things she had never tasted before, and the conversation flowed easily. Draven asked about her training, about the books she had been reading in the library, about whether she was comfortable in the estate. He didn't push, didn't pry into the painful parts of her past, just talked to her like she was someone worth knowing. It was intoxicating. "Can I ask you something?" Tina said eventually, emboldened by the wine and the warmth of the moment. "Anything. Why are you doing all of this? The training, the protection, the..." She gestured vaguely around the room. "Everything. You don't owe me anything. You could have left me in that courtyard." Draven was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more vulnerable than she had ever heard it. "Because I know what it's like to be seen as a monster. To have power that people fear instead of respect. To be used for what you can do instead of valued for who you are." "What happened to you?" she asked softly. He looked up at her, and there was such raw pain in his eyes that it took her breath away. "I became Alpha King when I was 18. Too young, too inexperienced, but my father died and there was no one else. The packs were in chaos, fighting amongst themselves, and I had to find a way to unite them. So I did what I thought I had to do. I became ruthless. Cold. I made decisions that saved lives, but cost me my humanity." "I don't think you're cold," Tina said. "You didn't know me then." He set down his glass. "I've done things I'm not proud of. Hurt people who didn't deserve it. Made choices that still haunt me. And for years, I told myself it was necessary. That being a good leader meant being feared, not loved. But then I saw you in that courtyard, and I saw myself. The person I used to be before I let the world break me into something hard and unfeeling." "You saved me," she whispered. "You saved yourself," he corrected. "You survived when most people would have broken. You held onto your humanity even when everyone around you was trying to strip it away. That's not weakness, Tina. That's the kind of strength I've been searching for my entire life." The air between them felt charged, electric. Tina's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, and when Draven reached across the table to take her hand, she didn't pull away. "I'm glad you're here," he said quietly. "I know this wasn't how you wanted to start your life, but I'm glad our paths crossed." "So am I," she admitted and realized with some surprise that she meant it. The moment stretched between them, fragile and perfect, and Tina found herself wondering what it would feel like if he leaned closer, if he closed the distance between them, if... The door to the dining hall slammed open. They both jerked apart, Draven rising to his feet instantly, his entire demeanor shifting from gentle to lethal in a heartbeat. A guard stood in the doorway, chest heaving, face pale. "Alpha," the guard gasped. "We have a situation." Draven's jaw tightened. "What kind of situation?" "The Arnridge pack. They're here. At the border. And they're demanding Tina." The bottom dropped out of Tina's stomach. She stood on shaking legs, gripping the edge of the table for support. How did they find me? I don't know, Draven said, his voice hard as stone. But they're not getting you. I made a promise, and I keep my promises. He turned to the guard. How many? 20, maybe 30. Armed. Their alpha is leading them. Of course he is. Draven moved toward the door, then paused, turning back to Tina. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Mira. I'm coming with you, she said. Tina. I'm coming with you, she repeated, and there was steel in her voice now. This is about me. I'm not hiding while you fight my battles. Something flickered in his expression. Pride, maybe. Or concern. You're not ready. I'm ready enough. She moved around the table to stand in front of him. You told me I needed to learn to use my power. To stop being afraid of it. Well, I'm not afraid anymore. And I'm not running. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Stay close to me. If things get dangerous, if I tell you to run, you run. Understood. Understood. They moved through the estate quickly, gathering more guards as they went. By the time they reached the front entrance, there were at least 15 armed wolves flanking them, all wearing the same grim expressions. Draven pushed open the doors, and they stepped out into the night. The driveway was lit by torches, and at the far end, just beyond the gates, Tina could see them. The Arnridge Pack. They were massive, all of them, built like warriors, wearing leather and weapons that gleamed in the firelight. At the front of the group stood a man who could only be their alpha. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair pulled back in a braid and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. His eyes were cold, calculating, and when they landed on Tina, she felt a chill run down her spine. Alpha King Draven, the man called out, his voice carrying across the distance. We meet at last. Alpha Valen, Draven replied, his tone neutral. You're trespassing on my territory. Forgive the intrusion. Valen didn't sound apologetic. But we're here for what's ours. The Ashenmoor Pack sold us a wolf. We paid for her. And we intend to collect. The sale was invalid, Draven said coldly. Tina was not theirs to sell. That's not how the Ashenmoor Pack tells it. Valen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They said she was offered willingly. As tribute. As peace. They lied. Perhaps. Valen's gaze slid to Tina again, lingering in a way that made her skin crawl. But lies or not, we paid a substantial price for that wolf. And we don't take kindly to being cheated. Then take it up with the Ashenmoor Pack, Draven said. Tina stays here. I'm afraid that's not acceptable. Valen took a step forward, and the wolves behind him shifted, hands moving to weapons. You see, Alpha King, we didn't just pay gold for her. We paid in promises, in alliances, in compromises that cost us dearly. And now you're telling us all of that was for nothing. I'm telling you that Tina is under my protection. And anyone who tries to take her will have to go through me. The tension was suffocating. Tina could feel her magic stirring, responding to her fear, to her anger, to the threat hanging in the air like a blade. She clenched her fists, trying to keep it contained, but it was getting harder. The silver fire wanted to come out, wanted to defend, wanted to fight. You're willing to start a war over one wolf? Valen asked, his tone almost conversational. I'm willing to honor my word, Draven replied. Something you should understand, if you have any honor at all. Valen's expression darkened. Careful, Alpha King. You're powerful, but you're not invincible. And you're making a lot of enemies over a girl who isn't even yours. She is mine, Draven said, and the possessiveness in his voice sent a shiver through Tina. I claimed her in front of witnesses. That claim is binding. And if you don't accept that, then we have nothing more to discuss. For a moment, Tina thought Valen would attack. She could see the calculation in his eyes, the way he was weighing his options, measuring the odds. But then he smiled again, that cold, empty smile, and took a step back. This isn't over, he said. The Arnridge Pack doesn't forget debts. And we always collect what we're owed. One way or another. He turned and gestured to his wolves, and they began to retreat, melting back into the darkness beyond the gates. But before he disappeared completely, Valen looked back at Tina one last time. "See you soon, Silver Wolf." Then they were gone. Draven didn't relax until the last of them had vanished from sight. He turned to his guards, issuing orders in a low, clipped voice. "Double the patrols. Increase security. No one in or out without his approval." Then he turned to Tina. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentler now. She nodded, but her hands were shaking. "He called me Silver Wolf." "How did he know?" "Your old pack must have told him." Draven's jaw clenched. "Which means they know what you are. And that makes you even more valuable to them. What do they want with me? Power? Leverage? Maybe both." He placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "But it doesn't matter. They're not getting you. I won't let them." "This is my fault," she whispered. "If I hadn't—" "Stop." His grip tightened slightly. "This is not your fault. You didn't ask to be sold. You didn't ask for any of this. And I'll be damned if I let you take responsibility for other people's greed." She looked up at him, and in his eyes, she saw something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. He meant every word. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's get you inside. It's been a long night." But as they walked back toward the estate, Tina couldn't shake the feeling that the long night was just beginning. And that Valen's words, "see you soon," weren't a threat. They were a promise. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Tina lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the confrontation over and over in her mind. The cold certainty in Valen's eyes. The way he had looked at her like she was already his. The promise wrapped in his parting words. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him standing at the gates, and her heart would start racing all over again. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up trying. She wrapped herself in a heavy robe and padded barefoot to the window, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. The grounds were lit by strategically placed lights now, and she could see guards moving in pairs along the perimeter. Draven had meant what he said about increasing security. The entire estate felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the next attack. A soft knock at her door made her jump. "Tina?" "It's me." Draven's voice, low and careful. She crossed the room and opened the door to find him standing there, still fully dressed, looking like he hadn't slept either. His hair was disheveled, like he had been running his hands through it, and there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there at dinner. "I saw your light on," he said. "Couldn't sleep." She shook her head. "You?" "No." He hesitated, then said, "I was going to go for a walk. Clear my head. Would you like to join me?" She should have said no. Should have stayed in her room where it was safe and warm. But the idea of being alone with her thoughts for another moment was unbearable. "Let me get dressed," she said. 5 minutes later, they were walking through the gardens behind the estate. The night air was crisp and cold, carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers and distant rain. Draven had brought a blanket, which he draped over her shoulders without a word, his fingers brushing against her collarbone in a way that made her breath catch. They walked in silence for a while, following a path that wound through carefully manicured hedges and past a fountain that sparkled in the moonlight. The sound of water was soothing, and Tina felt some of the tension start to drain from her shoulders. "I'm sorry," Draven said eventually. She looked at him in surprise. "For what?" "For putting you in danger. For not anticipating that the Ironridge pack would come here. For—" He trailed off, jaw tightening. "For everything. You saved me," Tina said quietly. "You gave me a chance when no one else would. You don't have anything to apologize for." "I claimed you without asking if that's what you wanted," he said, and there was something raw in his voice. "I made a decision that affects your entire life, and I didn't give you a choice. That's not how I wanted things to be between us." She stopped walking, turning to face him fully. The moonlight cast shadows across his face, making him look both vulnerable and impossibly strong. "Do you regret it?" "No." The word was immediate, firm. I don't regret protecting you, but I regret not asking you first. Not giving you agency in your own fate. I wouldn't have known what to say, she admitted. If you had asked me in that courtyard whether I wanted to be claimed, I would have been too terrified to answer. Too broken to make any kind of rational decision. You did what needed to be done. And She took a breath. I'm grateful. You shouldn't have to be grateful for basic decency. Maybe not. But in my world, decency was rare enough to be remarkable. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. You want to know the truth? When you claimed me, when you stood there in front of everyone and said I was yours, it was the first time in years that I felt like I mattered. Like I was worth protecting. So no, I don't blame you for not asking. I thank you for caring enough to do it at all. Draven was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You matter, Tina. More than you know. The words settled between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Tina's heart was pounding again, but not from fear this time. From something else entirely. Something that felt dangerous and thrilling and completely overwhelming. Can I ask you something? She said. Always. When you claimed me, was it just about protection? Or was there? She faltered, not sure how to finish the question. Draven stepped closer, and suddenly the space between them felt charged. Electric. You want to know if there was more to it? She nodded, not trusting her voice. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek, and she felt herself leaning into the touch without meaning to. When I saw you kneeling in that courtyard, he said softly, when I saw the way they looked at you, the way they treated you like you were nothing, I felt something I haven't felt in a long time. Rage, yes. But also recognition. Like I was looking at a piece of myself I thought I'd lost. And when I claimed you, when I said you were mine, it wasn't just about protection. It was about... What? She breathed. Wanting you to be safe. Wanting you to have the chance to become who you were meant to be. And wanting... His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Wanting to be the one who got to see it happen. Tina's breath caught. She should step back. Should put distance between them. Should remember that he was the Alpha King, powerful and dangerous, and she was just a broken wolf trying to figure out how to be whole again. But she didn't want to step back. She wanted to step closer. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to trust someone. How to let them in. Every person I've ever trusted has hurt me. I know. His other hand came up to cup her face, both palms warm against her skin. And I'm not asking you to trust me completely. Not yet. I'm just asking you to try. To let me prove that not everyone will hurt you. That some people... He paused, searching her eyes. That some people will fight for you instead. You already have, she said. You've already proven that. Then let me keep proving it. He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, to say no, to set a boundary. But she didn't. She tilted her face up, heart racing, and when his lips brushed against hers, soft and tentative and achingly gentle, she felt something inside her chest crack open. The kiss was nothing like she had imagined her first kiss would be. There was no desperation, no urgency. Just warmth and patience and the feeling of being cherished. His hands were steady on her face, grounding her, and when she made a small sound in the back of her throat, he pulled back just enough to look at her. Okay, he asked quietly. She nodded, unable to form words. He smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Good. They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, breathing the same air, and Tina felt something shift inside her. Not trust, not yet. But the beginning of it. The fragile, terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could let someone in without being destroyed. Tell me something about yourself, she said eventually. Something real. Something you don't tell other people. Draven pulled back slightly, considering the question. I'm afraid, he said finally. Of what? Of failing. Of making the wrong choice and watching everything fall apart. Of being the kind of leader my father was. He looked away, jaw tightening. My father ruled through fear. He was brutal, unforgiving, and by the end, everyone hated him. Including me. And sometimes I worry that I'm turning into him. That all my attempts to be different, to be better, are just window dressing over the same darkness. You're nothing like that, Tina said fiercely. A man like that wouldn't have saved me. Wouldn't have given me a choice. Wouldn't have spent weeks helping me learn to control my power instead of trying to use it for himself. You don't know what I'm capable of. I know enough. She reached up and placed her hand over his heart, feeling the steady rhythm beneath her palm. I know you have a conscience. I know you question yourself. And I know that people who are truly monsters don't worry about becoming monsters. They just are. He covered her hand with his own, pressing it more firmly against his chest. How did you get so wise? Pain has a way of teaching you things, she said quietly. You either let it break you or you let it make you stronger. I'm trying to choose the latter. You're succeeding. He brought her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Tina. And I'm honored that you're letting me be part of your journey. They stayed in the garden for another hour, talking about everything and nothing. Draven told her about his mother, about how she used to read to him in the library, about the way she would hum while she worked in the gardens. Tina told him about the moments before everything fell apart, when she was young enough to believe her family loved her unconditionally, before the power manifested and everything changed. It was the most honest conversation she had ever had with another person. And when they finally made their way back inside as the sky started to lighten with the approaching dawn, Tina realized something that both terrified and thrilled her. She was falling for him. Not because he had saved her. Not because he was powerful or kind or any of the other surface reasons. But because when she was with him, she felt like she could breathe. Like she didn't have to hide the broken parts of herself. Like maybe, just maybe, being broken wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. 3 days later, everything fell apart. It started with a letter. Tina was in the library, curled up in her favorite chair near the window, reading through another chronicle of the Lumini. Stellan had given her homework, instructing her to study the different manifestations of elemental magic throughout history, and she had been absorbed in a particularly fascinating account of a Lumini who could manipulate light itself when Mira appeared in the doorway. Miss Tina. Myra's voice was strained. There's someone here to see you. Tina looked up, immediately alert. Who? Your mother. The book slipped from her fingers. She made her way to the front sitting room on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. Mira had offered to stay with her, but Tina had declined. Whatever this was, whatever had brought her mother to Draven's estate, she needed to face it alone. Her mother stood by the window, back to the door, shoulders hunched in a way that made her look smaller than Tina remembered. She was wearing a simple dress, no jewelry, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. When she turned at the sound of Tina's entrance, her face was streaked with tears. Tina, she breathed, and started toward her. Don't. Tina held up a hand, stopping her mid-step. Don't come closer. Just tell me why you're here. Her mother's face crumpled. I needed to see you. To make sure you were all right. To apologize for selling me? Tina's voice was cold. For standing by and watching while they tied my wrists and forced me to my knees? For not saying a single word while they offered me up like I was nothing. We had no choice, her mother said desperately. The Arnridge Pack was going to destroy us. They were threatening war, threatening to kill everyone. The council said that if we gave them tribute, if we gave them you, they would leave us alone. So you chose your safety over your daughter. We chose the survival of the pack over one person. Her mother's voice broke. Don't you understand? If we hadn't done it, everyone would have died. Your father, your siblings, all of us. We had to make an impossible choice. No, Tina said quietly. You had to make a choice. And you chose wrong. You could have fought. Could have stood up to them. Could have done anything except sell your own child. But you didn't. You took the easy way out. And now you're here, asking for what? Forgiveness? Absolution. I'm here because I love you, her mother said, tears streaming down her face. Because you're my daughter, and I miss you, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The words should have meant something. Should have cracked open the wall Tina had built around her heart. But they didn't. They just sounded hollow. If you loved me, Tina said, you would have protected me. That's what parents do. They protect their children, even when it's hard. Even when it costs them something. But you didn't. You sacrificed me to save yourselves. And I'm supposed to just, what? Understand? Forgive? Please, her mother whispered. Please, Tina. I know I don't deserve it, but please. Come home. Come back to us. We can fix this. We can be a family again. I don't have a family, Tina said, and the words came out sharper than she intended. I have people who share my blood. But that's not the same thing. Her mother flinched like she had been slapped. The Alpha King has poisoned you against us. No. You did that all by yourselves. Tina moved toward the door, ready to leave, to get away from this woman who looked like her mother but felt like a stranger. But then her mother spoke again, and the words made her freeze. The Ironridge Pack is planning something. Something big. And they're coming for you. Tina turned slowly. What are you talking about? Her mother's face had gone pale. That's why I came. Not just to apologize. To warn you. The council has been in secret talks with Alpha Valen. They told him things. About your power. About what you are. And he's gathering allies. Other packs who fear what you represent. What you could become. What I could become. Tina repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. The prophecy, her mother said. Valen knows about the prophecy. And he believes that if you're allowed to reach your full potential, you'll destroy everything. The balance. The hierarchy. All of it. So he's planning to. To what? Her mother looked away. To kill you. Before you become too powerful to stop. The words hung in the air like poison. Tina felt her magic stirring, responding to her anger, her fear, her sense of absolute betrayal. Silver fire flickered at her fingertips, and her mother gasped, taking a step back. You came here to warn me, Tina said slowly, about a threat that exists because your pack, because you and Father and the Council told my enemies exactly what I am and how to find me. We didn't know what he was planning, her mother said desperately. We thought he just wanted you for your power. We didn't know he wanted to. Get out. Tina, please. Get out. The fire blazed brighter, spreading up her arms, and her eyes flared gold. You don't get to come here and play the concerned mother. You don't get to warn me about dangers you created. You made your choice. Now live with it. Her mother was crying openly now, but she nodded and moved toward the door. Before she left, she turned back one last time. I do love you, she whispered. I know you don't believe me. But I do. Then she was gone. Tina stood alone in the sitting room, shaking, the silver fire still dancing across her skin. She tried to calm it, to push it down the way Stellan had taught her, but it wouldn't go. Her emotions were too raw, too overwhelming. Betrayal. Anger. Fear. All of it churning inside her like a storm that couldn't be contained. The door burst open, and Draven was there, eyes wide with concern. I heard shouting. What happened? She told him. Everything. Her mother's visit, the warning, the revelation that her own pack had armed her enemies with the knowledge they needed to destroy her. By the time she finished, Draven's expression had gone from concern to absolutely furious. They told him about the prophecy, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. They told him what you are. Is it true? Tina asked. The prophecy. Does it really say I could destroy everything? Draven moved closer, placing his hands on her shoulders. The prophecy says you'll either save our world or watch it burn. But prophecies aren't commands, Tina. They're possibilities. The future isn't written in stone. You get to choose who you become. But what if I choose wrong? What if I become exactly what they fear? You won't. His grip tightened. Because you have something most people don't. You have a conscience. You have empathy. You have the ability to feel other people's pain and want to stop it. That's not the mark of someone who destroys worlds. That's the mark of someone who saves them. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. But the doubt was creeping in, cold and insidious, whispering that maybe her family was right. Maybe she was dangerous. Maybe the world would be safer if she didn't exist. What do we do? She asked quietly. We prepare, Draven said. If Valen is gathering allies, if he's planning an attack, then we need to be ready. I'll reach out to my own allies. Call in favors. Strengthen our defenses. And you. He cupped her face gently. You keep training. Keep getting stronger. Because when they come, and they will come, I need you to be ready to defend yourself. I don't want to fight. I know. But sometimes we don't get to choose. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I won't let them take you. I won't let them hurt you. But I need you to promise me that you'll fight if it comes to that. That you won't just give up. She nodded, even though the idea of fighting, of potentially hurting people, made her stomach turn. I promise. Good. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, lingering for a moment before pulling back. I need to make some calls. Will you be all right? Yes. But as he left the room, issuing orders to guards and pulling out his phone, Tina knew she was lying. She wouldn't be all right. Not until this was over. Not until she knew whether she was the salvation the prophecy promised or the destruction it warned against. And as she looked down at her hands, at the silver fire that had finally faded back into her skin, she realized something that chilled her to the bone. She was terrified of her own power. But she was even more terrified of what would happen if she didn't learn to use it. Because the world was coming for her. And she had a choice to make. Fight or die. There was no third option. The attack came 3 nights later, under a moonless sky. Tina woke to the sound of breaking glass and distant screams. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming, that her nightmares had finally bled into reality. But then she heard it again, closer this time, the unmistakable sound of combat. Steel against steel. Snarls. The wet, terrible sound of flesh tearing. She was out of bed before conscious thought caught up with her body, pulling on clothes with shaking hands. Her magic was already stirring, responding to the danger, silver fire crackling beneath her skin like electricity, looking for somewhere to ground. The door to her room burst open, and she spun, fire blazing in her palms, ready to fight. It was Mira. Thank God, the older woman gasped, her normally composed face streaked with dirt and fear. We need to go. Now. The Arnridge pack broke through the perimeter. They're everywhere. Where's Draven? Fighting. He sent me to get you. There's a safe room in the basement, reinforced steel. They can't. No. Tina's voice was firm. I'm not hiding. Miss Tina, please. I said no. She moved past Mira into the hallway, and immediately the scope of the attack became clear. Smoke was filtering through the corridors. The sounds of battle were coming from multiple directions. And through a shattered window at the end of the hall, she could see fire burning in the gardens. They had come with everything. Mira grabbed her arm. If you won't hide, then at least let me get you out of here. There's a passage that leads to the forest. You can escape. And leave Draven to fight alone? Leave all of you to die defending me. Tina shook her head. No. This is happening because of me. Because of what I am. I'm not running anymore. She didn't wait for Myra's response. She ran toward the sounds of fighting, her bare feet silent on the cold floors, her magic building with every step. She could feel it now, the full scope of her power, pressing against her skin like it was trying to break free. For weeks she had been learning control, learning restraint, learning to keep it contained. But maybe it was time to stop containing it. She burst through a set of double doors and found herself in the main entrance hall. It was chaos. Draven's guards were fighting desperately against what looked like twice their number, wolves in both human and shifted form locked in brutal combat. Blood painted the walls. Bodies littered the floor. And there, in the center of it all, was Draven. He was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Fighting in human form, but moving with inhuman speed and strength, every movement precise, lethal, efficient. But he was outnumbered. For every enemy he took down, 2 more seemed to appear. And Tina could see him tiring, could see the way his movements were getting slower, how he was accumulating injuries faster than he could heal them. She didn't think. She just acted. The silver fire exploded from her hands in a wave of pure power, sweeping across the entrance hall like a living thing. It didn't burn Draven's guards somehow, instinctively. She knew how to direct it, but every enemy it touched screamed and fell back, their skin blistering, their weapons melting in their hands. The fighting stopped. Everyone turned to stare at her. Tina stood in the doorway, her entire body wrapped in silver flames, her eyes blazing gold, so bright they cast their own light. The fire danced around her like it was celebrating, like it had been waiting its entire existence for this moment. And she felt powerful. Not afraid. Not ashamed. Just powerful. "Get out of this house," she said, and her voice carried a resonance it had never had before. Like the earth itself was speaking through her. "Or I will burn you all to ash." For a moment, no one moved. Then Alpha Valen stepped through the front entrance, and Tina's blood turned to ice. He looked even more imposing than he had at the gates. Covered in blood that clearly wasn't his, carrying a sword that dripped red onto the floor, his cold eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to run. But she didn't. She held her ground, keeping the fire burning bright. "There she is," Valen said, almost conversationally. "The Silver Wolf. The prophesied destroyer. I have to admit, you're more impressive than I expected." "Leave," Tina said. "This is your only warning." Valen laughed. "Oh, I don't think so. You see, I didn't come all this way, lose all these men, just to turn around and leave empty-handed. I came for you, little wolf. And I'm not leaving without you. You can't have her." Draven's voice was a growl. He moved to stand between Tina and Valen, despite his injuries, despite the fact that he could barely stand. "You'll have to kill me first." "That can be arranged," Valen said pleasantly. Then he gestured, and more wolves poured into the entrance hall. Not just Ironridge Pack. She could see other pack symbols, other colors. He had brought an alliance. Just like her mother had warned. They were completely outnumbered. "Draven," Tina said quietly. "Get your people out. I'm not leaving you. I'm not asking." She stepped forward, placing herself fully between him and the approaching army. "This is my fight. My choice. And I choose to end it." "Tina, no." But she wasn't listening anymore. She closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, past the fear, past the doubt, past all the years of being told she was dangerous and wrong and cursed. She reached for the core of her power, the burning heart of what she truly was. And she let it free. The explosion of magic was like nothing she had ever experienced. Silver fire erupted from her body in waves, filling the entrance hall, spilling out through the doors and windows, spreading across the grounds like wildfire. But this wasn't destructive flame. This was purifying, transforming. Every surface it touched seemed to glow with an inner light, and the attacking wolves stumbled back, shielding their eyes from the brilliance. Tina felt herself changing. Her human form couldn't contain this much power. She shifted, but not into the wolf she had been before. This was something else. Something ancient. Her fur blazed silver-white, so bright it was almost painful to look at. Her eyes burned pure gold. And from her body, flames rose like wings, casting shadows that danced across the walls like living things. She was enormous, twice the size of a normal wolf. A Lumini in her true form. A guardian made manifest. The enemy wolves fell back, fear replacing aggression. Some tried to run. Others shifted, hoping their wolf forms would give them an advantage. But Tina was beyond them now. Beyond their weapons. Beyond their threats. She opened her jaws and roared, and the sound shook the very foundations of the estate. "You came to my home," she said, and her voice was multiplied, echoing like a chorus. "You threatened the people who protected me. You tried to take away the only place I've ever felt safe. And you did it because you're afraid of what I might become." She took a step forward, and the flames around her intensified. "Let me show you what you should really fear." She didn't attack them. She didn't need to. The magic radiating from her body was enough. It pressed against them like a physical force, making it hard to breathe, hard to move, hard to think. The weaker wolves collapsed outright, overwhelmed. The stronger ones fell to their knees, heads bowed, unable to meet her gaze. Even Valen looked shaken. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" Tina circled him slowly, her massive form moving with liquid grace. "You wanted to see what the prophecy was warning about. You wanted to know if I was dangerous. Well, here I am. This is what I am when I stop holding back. This is what I become when you threaten the people I love." "You'll destroy us all," Valen managed, his voice strained. "I could," Tina agreed. "I could burn this entire territory to ash. I could wipe out every pack that came here tonight. I could make sure no one ever threatens me again. I have that power." She leaned in closer, her golden eyes boring into his. "But I won't. Because that's not who I am. I'm not the destroyer you fear. I'm the guardian you need. And the only reason you don't see that is because you're too busy being afraid to actually look." She straightened, addressing the entire hall now. The Lumini were protectors. Guardians of the balance. And that's what I choose to be. Not because a prophecy says I should. Not because anyone expects it of me. But because I've seen what fear and hatred do to people. I've lived through it. And I refuse to become part of that cycle. Her flames began to recede, slowly, gradually, until she was standing in her human form again, still glowing, but no longer overwhelming. "But understand this. If you come for me again, if you threaten this pack, if you hurt anyone I care about, I will stop you. I will use every ounce of power I have to protect the people who deserve protecting. Not because I want to, but because I have to." Silence filled the hall. Then, slowly, one of the enemy wolves bowed his head. Then another. And another. Until every wolf except Valen was on their knees, heads lowered in submission. Not to Draven. To her. Valen looked around at his allies, at his own pack members, and Tina saw the moment he realized he had lost. Not the battle. But something far more important. He had lost their faith. Their belief that killing her was the right thing to do. "This isn't over," he said, but there was no conviction in his voice anymore. "Yes, it is," Draven said, moving to stand beside Tina. His injuries were healing now, the worst of them already closing. "You came here to prove that Tina was dangerous. Instead, you proved that she's powerful, merciful, and exactly what the prophecy said she would be. A guardian. Not a destroyer. And if you or anyone else ever threatens her again, you won't be dealing with just her. You'll be dealing with me. And unlike Tina, I don't believe in mercy for those who attack my home." The threat hung in the air, absolute and undeniable. Valen held Draven's gaze for a long moment, then looked at Tina. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite respect, but close. "I underestimated you," he said quietly. "Everyone does," Tina replied. "But I'm done being underestimated. I'm done being afraid. And I'm done letting other people decide who I am." Valen nodded slowly, then turned and walked out of the entrance hall. His wolves followed, some limping, others helping carry the injured. Within minutes, the estate was clear of enemies, leaving only Draven's pack and the wreckage of the battle. Tina's legs gave out. Draven caught her before she hit the floor, lowering her gently. Easy. You used a lot of power. You need to rest. Did we win? She asked, her voice slurred with exhaustion. Yes. He smiled, brushing hair away from her face. We won. You won. Good. Her eyes were already closing. That's good. The world faded to black, but for the first time in her life, Tina wasn't afraid of the darkness. Because she knew that when she woke up, she would still be safe. Still be home. Still be exactly who she was meant to be. Tina woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of flowers. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was or what had happened. Then it all came rushing back. The attack. The battle. The moment she had finally stopped holding back and let the world see what she truly was. She sat up carefully, expecting pain, expecting exhaustion. But she felt fine. Better than fine, actually. Like something inside her had finally aligned properly after years of being slightly off-center. The door opened and Draven entered carrying a tray laden with food. When he saw she was awake, his entire face transformed with relief. You're up, he said, setting the tray on the bedside table. How do you feel? Different, she said honestly. Lighter. Like I've been carrying something heavy my entire life and finally put it down. That's the power settling, he explained, sitting on the edge of the bed. You claimed it fully last night. Made it truly yours. It's not fighting you anymore. How long was I asleep? 2 days. He reached out and took her hand. You scared me. I thought maybe you'd used too much. Burned yourself out. But I didn't. No, you didn't. His smile was warm, proud. You were magnificent, Tina. I've never seen anything like it. The way you stood there, the way you gave them a choice instead of just destroying them. That took more strength than any amount of power ever could. She looked down at their joined hands. Did they really bow to me? Or did I imagine that part? They bowed. Even Valen's own pack. You showed them something they'd never seen before. A Lumini who chose mercy over vengeance. Who had every right to kill them and chose not to. He squeezed her hand gently. You changed everything last night. Word is already spreading. Other packs are hearing about what happened. About you. Is that good or bad? I think it's whatever you make it. He paused, considering his next words carefully. The Council of Alphas wants to meet you. They want to see for themselves if the prophecy is real. If you're real. Fear flickered through her chest. And if I say no? Then I'll tell them no. You don't owe anyone anything, Tina. You can stay here, live quietly, never use your power again if that's what you want. Or, he trailed off. Or what? Or you can step into who you're meant to be. Become the guardian the prophecy spoke of. Help me unite the packs, create peace, build something better than what we have now. His silver eyes met hers, intense and hopeful. I'm not asking you to be a weapon. I'm asking you to be what you've always been. Someone who sees the best in people even when they don't deserve it. Someone who chooses compassion over cruelty. Someone who... He hesitated. Someone I'd be honored to stand beside. Tina's breath caught. Draven. I know it's too soon, he said quickly. I know you're still figuring out who you are and what you want. But I need you to know, what I feel for you, it's not just about your power. It's not about the prophecy or what you can do for the packs. It's about you. The woman who survived when she should have broken. The woman who held on to her humanity even when everyone told her she was a monster. The woman who looked at me and saw someone worth saving too. Tears were building behind her eyes. I don't know how to be what everyone needs me to be. You don't have to be what everyone needs, he said softly. You just have to be you. That's always been enough. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't asking her to be perfect. He wasn't asking her to save the world. He was just asking her to try. To take a chance. To believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be something more than the broken girl kneeling on cold stone. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. So am I." He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "But I think maybe we can be scared together. And maybe that'll be enough." She smiled, feeling the last of her walls crumble. "Together sounds good." He leaned forward, and she met him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that felt like a promise. Like the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted, but both of them desperately needed. When they finally pulled apart, Tina felt something settle in her chest. Not quite peace, but close. The knowledge that wherever this path led, whatever challenges lay ahead, she wouldn't be facing them alone. "So," Draven said, his forehead resting against hers. "Does this mean you'll meet the council?" She took a breath, considering. A week ago, the idea would have terrified her. But now? Now she felt something else. Determination. Purpose. The spark of possibility. "Yes," she said. "I'll meet them. But on my terms. I'm done letting other people decide how my story goes." His smile could have lit up the entire world. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As they sat there together, sunlight streaming through the windows, the sounds of the estate coming back to life outside, Tina realized something profound. She had spent her entire life being told she was too much. Too powerful. Too dangerous. Too other. But maybe being too much was exactly what the world needed. Maybe the girl they tried to break, the wolf they tried to sell, the power they tried to contain, was always meant to become something they couldn't control. Something wild. Something free. Something absolutely unstoppable. And as Draven pulled her close, as she felt the steady beat of his heart against hers, Tina made a choice. She chose herself. She chose her power. She chose to stand up and fight for the kind of world she wanted to live in. Because being sold had broken her. Being claimed had saved her. But choosing herself? That was what finally made her whole. The question isn't whether Tina will save the world or watch it burn. The question is whether the world deserves someone like her. Someone who was dragged through hell and came out the other side, still believing in mercy. Someone who had every reason to become a monster and chose to be a guardian instead. Someone who looked at the people who hurt her and said, "I forgive you, but I won't forget." Would you have chosen her side? Or would you have been one of the wolves in the crowd, watching her kneel, convinced that sacrifice was necessary for peace? Because that's the real question the prophecy asks. Not what will she become, but what will you become when faced with someone who refuses to be what you need them to be? Someone who demands to be seen as human, as whole, as worthy, even when it's inconvenient. Tina isn't just a Lumini. She's every person who was told they were too much and chose to be more anyway. Every voice that was silenced and learned to roar. Every light that was dimmed and decided to shine brighter. And her story is just beginning. If this story lit something inside you, if you felt Tina's pain and her triumph, if you found yourself rooting for the broken girl who refused to stay broken, then you belong here. At Cindy's Wolfheart Stories. Because here, we don't tell safe stories. We tell stories that burn. Stories about the people the world tried to break who stood up anyway. Stories about finding power in your wounds and strength in your scars. Stories about choosing yourself even when everyone tells you that you shouldn't. So if you're ready for more stories like Tina's, if you want to hear about other wolves who refused to bow, other guardians who chose mercy, other hearts that wouldn't break, subscribe. Let's burn together.